Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to finish up this week's theme of horns, checking out songs that feature a horn section. We're looking at the Jihye Orchestra. The track that we're going to check out is Revived Mind off of the Daring Minds album. And let's see what's going on here. It's not too often we get orchestras on the channel, so I'm pretty excited about this. Let's dive in and see what's going on. Very light on the feet. Continuing that on with these layers. Yeah, we still have very few held out notes. A lot of this is rhythmically short to create that bounciness. Beautifully layered. Interesting microtonality there in the horns. Trombones, I think it was. We had two slides that were time displaced, so there was some dissonance there. We got some trilling in there. Bass drum, snare, cross-sticking, trombone. Maybe that's not a trombone. Yeah, that's a trombone. So much hand percussion. Slowly working in other lines. We have our piano chords. Interesting, as we increase the intensity through the layers, our soloist begins to use more and more notes outside the key. Really interesting how jazzy this has turned out. Like this unified band section with these sharp stingers is so big bands. There's something calming about this part. Okay. I don't know how to feel about this one. It has some phenomenal ideas in it at times, but overall, I feel it's a bit uh, lacking in execution. I think that's yeah, you know what? That's going to be what yeah. Great idea. Cool concepts. Enjoyed several moments, but overall the entire song as a whole, I think just falls flat of just misses the mark as far as completely executing it all flawlessly. And that's nothing to scoff at. I don't know who Jihye Lee is. Um, Never heard the name before. Interesting. Also, it's called an orchestra, but so many moments feel more big band to me than classical. And I suppose you could write jazz for an orchestra. But to me, this is somebody coming to an orchestral group of instrumentations from a jazz background, which is even more confusing because I would think that I would have heard her name before. I'm going to assume she's the composer, though. Anyways, going off on a tangent here. It's not too bad of a thing that there's a lot of great ideas in here, but the execution could use a little bit of work because the goal here is extremely lofty. There is so much that could go wrong in this track. The sheer fact that it works a majority of the time, even if it doesn't quite come together for me, is a testament to the prowess that Jihye has over composition in general, the understanding of how instruments work, how music can be crafted to create specific vibes and thoughts and ideas and feelings. This is by no means a bad song at all. I don't want anyone to walk away uh, from this video thinking that I didn't enjoy this or that I don't think it is good. It is great, in fact, but it's like I would rate it if I did ratings, it'd be like an 8 out of 10, but I really felt like it could have been that 10 out of 10 with a little bit more time in the oven, a little bit more work put towards it. But I also understand as a composer, music maker myself, that there is a point in any project. Doesn't even just necessarily need to be music. There's got to be a point in any project where you say, you know what, that's it. I could nitpick this and make micro advancements for the next decade of my life, and I'll never reach that 10 out of 10, that perfection. There will always be something to tweak. There has to be a point in every project where you just say, I'm done. This is as good as it's going to get. And, I can certainly see that coming into play here. There's a lot of things that I don't even know that I would add. I don't know what I could do to this. I've put together some classical pieces before. I've written for orchestras. I have some of that writing available for y'all to listen to on my other channel as well as my band lab. I feel like this is way above my skill level, though. I I just really want to put into perspective because I am going to say some negative stuff about this track, but I do want to put into perspective that I do think this is phenomenal work and that this is a skill level above mine. I want to make that clear. I'm not trying to put myself above this track at all. So let's get into some of this stuff while it's still fresh in my mind. A lot of this track is based on layers. Lots of layers. I liked the introduction to the song. We started out rather simple. And we slowly oh no, I can't remember if we started simple and grew or if that's how we came out of the solo section. Regardless, where we ended at the beginning was just tons of layers. We had, flutes doing this thing and trumpets doing this thing and trombones and saxophones and, marimbas and the drum, the snare and the bass, which I think the bass definitely sounded like a orchestral bass, a concert bass. Just a huge bass drum that you would use mallets to hit on the side of. The snare, there's not much difference between a concert snare and a snare that you would put in a kit. So they sound mostly the same to me, although there is a ton of clarity and brightness in this one. I don't know if that's just a different type of metal or, whatever would go into crafting the drum head, any of the materials there, but it just, especially on the cross-sticking part in the solo section, that was such a bright percussion sound. I loved it. Oh, we did start soft. We started with just marimba. That's what it was. Yeah, beautiful intro. But the heart of this song, though, is the layers, and we just have so much going on, and it's cluttered, it's claustrophobic, it's chaotic. There's even moments where we can see the composition swaying, moving elegantly between controlled chaos, where everything comes together to create this very whimsical, bright, uh, I don't want to say noise because normally we have a negative connotation with that, but just this whimsical, bright flurry of sounds where everything just kind of works. We have an instrument here and then it creates a pocket when it's done with its line, so someone fills that pocket. And there's not really any silence, it's all moving ideas. There's not too many suspended ideas either. It is a series of rhythmically moving ideas. And it's just really joyful to listen to. It's like going into the forest and hearing all of the sounds of the river and pitter patter of raindrops still falling from some of the leaves and birds chirping. And it's all these little noises that come together to just create the atmosphere, right? The forest would sound weird if it was silent. And that's what this sort of reminds me of. There is a juvenile energy to this opening section that I really love, and it dips between that and something a bit less controlled, where we do have dissonance and we have lines stepping on each other's toes, and we have instruments that feel like they're coming in a bit early, or they're holding on to their idea just a bit too long, and it creates a cluttered feeling where another instrument or two instruments who should be cycling off sections end up overlapping a little bit, and it makes a lot of contrasting concepts. So like I said, we move through this very harmonious controlled chaos into sometimes this cluttered noise, or teetering on the side of noise, but then it swings back, and it's just this beautiful back and forth there, going with the idea of the revived mind. This reminds me a lot of when I listen to a song that just really hits me, especially if I'm listening to it on a reaction and we get into the analysis, and I'm like cutting into like 7 different concepts immediately, and I'm like doing these minor segues into something that's kind of related, but I also had more to say on the old topic, but I'm already moving into the second, and by the time I feel like I really need to backpedal to the first to further dive into that, I'm also pushing into a third segment, and it's just my mind is so enthralled with what I heard that there's so many things I want to say about it. I don't know if I could necessarily call that a revived mind, so to speak, but I think the concept is applicable. Where maybe you're just so hung up on the mundanities of life. You wake up, you go to work, you come home, you eat dinner, you might watch your favorite TV show, the next episode of it, you go to bed, you start the day over. But then something clicks, something happens unusual outside of the norm, and it kind of kickstarts your mind. And maybe your hobby, maybe you like painting or making music or whatever, and you just suddenly have inspiration for something, and you immediately need to get to your work area, whether that's just pulling up a piece of paper where you're at or getting to a computer or whatever, and you just dig into it. Your mind has been revived. You have so many thoughts and ideas, and you need to get them all out. And that's kind of what I understand here. There's a beauty to that flurry of inspiration, but there's also chaos to it. It barely borders on that line, it teeters one way and the other frequently. Sometimes it does hinder you a little bit with just how much you want to get done, but it's still something very beautiful and organic about it all. The mind that was dulled through rote, uh, just the normal aspects of life has been kickstarted, it's been revived, to borrow the name of the track, and is back up to doing things and thinking and being excited about stuff. I really like that. I do. From a thematic angle, it is beautiful. We eventually pull this down a bit, and we go to a very simplified section. We have a trombone solo with cross stick snare and bass, a bass drum. I like the trombone solo. I'm still a little torn on it. I don't know if it's a trombone or a baritone. I was trying so hard listening to the intricacies of the note changes to figure out if it was a slide or valves. Because timbre-wise, it's not a trumpet. Pitch-wise, it's not a trumpet. It's too high for a tuba. That puts us in the trombone and baritone area, and they're pretty close as far as timbre and ranges, but one's valved and one uses a slide, and I was really trying to figure it out, and I landed on trombone by the end of it, but I'm still like 70-30 on it, not entirely sure. It's a beautiful solo, though. It has some really fun ideas, but it is also very safe. There isn't really anything in it that pushes the boundaries. It is a relaxed moment, which I think tying it back to the themes would just be that moment when you have all of your inspiration out, or maybe you've been working for 5 hours straight and you just need that break, you need to relax, and you still have these chill ideas going on though. Your brain isn't turned off, you haven't reached that numbness again, but it's not as wild and active as it was. It's just chill and calm and nice to exist with. If you kind of a weird way to think about, but honestly, like, we exist with our brain. I think that sentence might mean more to some people than others. Some people might feel very in control of their minds, but I'd wager a majority of us might feel like we live with our minds. We control it at times, more or less depending on the person, but there's still a lot of it that the mind just does on its own. We have to deal with. Anyways, living with the mind in this chill trombone solo is nice, but chaos is always one to crop back up. And I'm not too sure where this leads into our final moment. The trombone solo continues, but begins to utilize more and more notes outside of the key. The layers slowly come back, and we approach more of the chaotic noise side of our first section, where it's less about purposefully and craftily applying so many layers in a way that isn't overwhelming, and more about just kind of putting everything there. It becomes dissonant in a lot of ways between the note choices in the trombone that, with the large amount of notes surrounding it, don't really get the spice so much as feeling out of place. It becomes very noisy, difficult to concentrate. That's actually a good line. Sometimes I surprise myself with what I say. uh, Difficult to concentrate. That pairs well with the revived mind concept, sticking to that mental metaphor. What's really interesting, though, is not too long after this segment, we dip into an extremely powerful unified moment. This is the loudest section of the entire track. We have the brass section just killing it. The trumpets are so high up there note wise, and they have almost everybody's blasting, just getting these really powerful volume that adds a little bit of compression to the pitches. They're paired against these flurry of notes, these quick glissandos in the flutes, this rising ideas. The clarinets are in on this as well. Just a just start from a low note and rise up until you hit the high one. And they're very quickly played, and it's just that speed and flurry paired against this raw power and strength from our brass with their very short staccato stingers, and it doesn't take very long before everybody is doing the same rhythmic idea, and it's just these very powerful punches. It shows a unification of thoughts, taking all of those chaotic ideas and razor honing them into a single concept. We move out of this and they separate again, but the song doesn't allow those ideas to stay separated to finish it out. In the last 10 or so seconds, we return back to those unified stingers. And it's almost as if I think I'm getting the larger picture here. It's not so much about reviving the mind and working within all of that wild ideas. It's more about learning to control an active mind. The revived part kind of comes in, I think, just as a setup. I totally understand what it feels like to lack creative intention. Just to have that numb mind. I spent several years before starting this channel not exploring anything new musically, barely writing anything new. I would play instruments primarily just to noodle about, and nothing ever felt strong enough for me to put on paper. I wasn't good enough at production to even worry about taking it off of sheet music. I mean, the first few songs that I wrote after my entire inspiration got kickstarted after doing this track and being introduced to so much new music was all MIDI, because I would program it in notation software and just use whatever libraries were available. So, at the time I felt like I just had no inspiration and no means to even explore things and kickstart some inspiration. So I totally understand this idea of taking a numb, dead mind creatively, and giving it that little bit of kick, that little electrical shock to reignite you, moving from electricity to fire, to reignite the flames of creativity, and to get back into that mindset of making things, making art, or even just fun, just enjoying music again. And it does start with a flurry. Even outside of that, I mean, that, multi-year numbness, and that really rough dusting off the cobwebs thing, but even just, having a bit of inspiration after, a week of writer's block or something, it's still, you get that flurry. It's a lot of ideas come together, and you have to you got to focus it down and figure out what you're going to do with all these thoughts. And I think that is what this is about. The brainstorming session is just all of these ideas coming together, and then there's a bit of a lull. Maybe it is that you've hit writer's block, or maybe it's just that you have all these concepts, but you don't know what to do with them. We go back to a lot of the chaos, but this time we begin to reign in control and find that focus. We end the track with complete control over the minds, complete control of the creative direction, and an understanding and ownership of what we're going to do with this inspiration. Yeah, that's gorgeous. And it's wild how all of that came to me through two words. And the music, of course. I don't know if I would have necessarily gone in this angle without the title. The title did guide me a little bit. And I mentioned at the beginning I was going to have some negative things to say about this, but I don't anymore. On a musical level, this is convoluted. It is contrasty in ways that don't really support themselves. It's messy in a couple of sections. And I even mentioned that despite these things, I still felt it was a great piece. And I wonder how much of that was a subconscious understanding of what was going on. As soon as I took into the idea of the revived mind, and that this might be a musical representation of the creative process, did I realize that, as usual with some of these songs that push against more traditional musical stylings, it's more about the theme and the metaphor, the storytelling, than necessarily just the music. On its own, there's some odd choices in here. Telling a story, those odd choices make perfect sense. Those are my thoughts on Jihye Lee Orchestra's Revived Mind. Let me know what you guys thought of this track. Anything that stood out to you, anything you'd like to add on to what I said, or correct me on. I'd like to know. Also, what did you get out of this song? Did you hear a story with it? Did you have a flow, or was it just a series of weird sounds that you'd never want to revisit? I'm interested. Above the comment section is a description box, and there's a link for Linktree. It takes you to this menu right here, which has links for everything related to the channel. You can find the communities around the channel, such as Twitter and Discord. You can also find ways to support the channel, such as merch, special selections, and Patreon. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three. We have a creator request coming up next. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual, with an album reaction. Sunday, we'll have our... Nope, there's no live stream on Sunday. We'll be back Monday, though, with next week's theme. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.